recording. Okay. Yay! Welcome, family. Welcome, family. I'm naming this segment now. We are family. It's spelled out FAMELE. Maybe I'll get some graphics later. So this is our attempt to document our family history, so that we can make more sense of our beautiful blended family that is very unique. I decided that this was necessary because I know a lot of people that are younger than me, and sometimes myself doesn't quite understand our unique family tree. So I thought it would be helpful to help people get an idea. So on the last one, we had Mommy, which is Diane, and Aunt Brenda, the big Diane, and Aunt Brenda talk about the Ellison clan, and they talked about the Mason clan a little bit. So we know that Grandma's mother was Elizabeth, and she was a Mason. And then we have James Ellison, and I do not remember the name, grandma's, his mother's name. But James and Pertell, our grandparents had Patricia, James, Diane, Jackie, and then Brenda. I don't know what I wrote right here. And then Brenda. So James and Pertell part ways, and then comes the Pertell and Ray, which Raymond Johnson, which most of us know as Grandpa. That's the grandpa we grew up with. So I just thought that I would get Diane. We call her Little Aunt Diane. Yeah. I just call her Aunt Diane, but everybody else call her Little Aunt Diane. And Aunt Janice to help us fill in some of the gaps of where we left off. So the first question that I asked my mother is, what is the oldest family member that you remember?
Who are you asking?
You and Diane.
Oh, me? The oldest family member on the Johnson side?
Yes.
Would be my grandmother with Julia, which is my daddy's mother.
Julia, yes. I heard that name before. Where were they from? Do you know where Grandpa's people was from?
Yeah. Caswell County, right off Goodyear Boulevard. That's their roots there. That's where I grew up when which I was born in Norfolk, but when my dad moved back to Norfolk, moved
back to Danville.
Right, Caswell County, Danville, Virginia.
Okay. So you so you sort of a Danville native.
I am.
Okay, but you were born in Norfolk.
I was born in Norfolk. All my other siblings, Larry, Ricky, and Sandra, they were born in Danville. I was the only one born in Norfolk when they moved, and my dad came back with the children, which was us.
Okay, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. What about you? Well, first of all, do you actually remember anything about Grandma Julia, or any of her personality traits, or anything that you might remember
about her? She was very, very kind woman. She raised me from when I came back to Danville at 2 until my father, Raymond Johnson, and your grandmother, Pertella Johnson, united. So we was always with our grandma Julia, my dad's mom, from 2 to 8. I was 2 when we came, 8 when they got married. Around 8 years old. Okay. But my grandmother was a very, very spiritual woman, kind woman. She was my mom when I was a child, until 8 years old.
Did you call her grandma, or what did y'all call her?
Grandma.
You did, okay. Do you have any memory of her at all, Aunt Janice?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely. And to answer the first question you asked Diane, she is also the oldest person that I remember, my grandmother. And my grandmother named me. Well, she wanted to name me Mom said that she wanted to name me. Her name is Julia Johnson. So my name was supposed to be my name was actually supposed to have been Julia Deborah Johnson. But mom didn't want to name me Julia, so she wanted to name me Janice. So she kept the name that Grandma Julia wanted to name me, the middle name, which was Deborah. So my name is Janice Deborah Johnson. And I can remember the memory that I always had about Grandma was when people would say my whole name, and if they read my whole name, they would say Deborah, because it's spelled the same way. And Grandma would always say Deborah, because Deborah is in the Bible. So she named me Deborah from the Bible. And she would always correct people when they say Deborah. She would say, no, her name is Deborah.
And that's where you get it from, huh?
What?
The correcting people when if they say Deborah, you're like Deborah.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
And actually, I didn't like the name. I love my name now, but I was like, Deborah. That's a crazy name, Deborah. So, sometime, and I'm like, that's a pretty cool name. That's actually a pretty name. And because I used to, I would switch it up and say Detorah. And I'm like, why would I do that? My name is Deborah, and it's beautiful. And my grandmother named me that. So I guess that came with maturity.
Okay.
But, and the memory, I mean, as Diane said, she was just a very, very sweet, loving woman. And I remember very clearly, this is a very vivid memory of me, because they had chickens. And I would go and spend the weekend out there sometimes. Daddy would take me out, they would take me out there, and I would spend the night. And I remember a fond memory is I would be out there playing around with some chickens. And then that next day or later on that next morning or whatever, I actually saw Grandma would, wring that chicken's neck and chop the head off.
Okay, well, that's one way to get it.
And that was dinner. And I remember just crying because I was out there playing with the little chickens and petting them like there was a little pet. And, it's like she killed my friend.
That was one of the freshest chickens.
Huh?
I said, that's the freshest way to get chicken, I guess.
I know, but I didn't eat that chicken. I didn't want to eat that chicken because that was my friend. And for a long time, I wouldn't eat chicken because of that.
Wow.
Well, so, and Diane, you were talking about you all growing up off of Goodyear, right?
Yes.
That's the same house that you would visit out there, about Goodyear and Janice?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, and Diane, you were listing the siblings that joined the blended family. So, for clarity, before Raymond met Pertel, he was married to your mother.
Yes.
Do you mind sharing your mother's name? Because I don't know it, but it's based on your comfort.
Katie Barnes. Katie Barnes.
Katie, okay. I feel like I have heard her name before. So Katie and Ray had 4 children.
That's right.
Can you list your siblings in age order?
Oh, baby.
Broke up. So from what I gather, you're breaking up, but is Larry, Aunt Sandra, Ricky, and then you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, that's correct.
Your screen is stuck, but hopefully you come back. I can hear you better now. Okay, there you go. And Grandpa also has an older child before you all, and her name is
Darnell.
Okay. But only the four of you all came after living with your grandmother to Grandma when Grandpa and Grandma got together, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
What was that like? What do you remember of that when you first started coming into the Ellison clan now and meeting your new siblings and like this transition from living with your grandma to living with a stepmom?
Because I want to hear this. This is very interesting. I can't hear her.
I know, I never heard it, so I just know everybody. And this is like even rare for us to even make a distinguish of step, because that's something that I never
We never
experienced
do.
in our family, and I never even knew until older that, you know, I didn't really understand it, but I didn't distinguish it that way. So
So
wow.
Siobhan, while Diane is finding a
Is it
place that she has good reception, and by you saying that you didn't know till you were older, I am one of the siblings, and I didn't know until I was older. I didn't quite grasp that, you know. To me, it was like, because everybody called Raymond Johnson in the household, the blended family. Everybody called Raymond Johnson daddy, and everybody called Portella Johnson mama. So and me coming up, I didn't know any difference. Everybody was my sisters and brothers. No, I mean, they still are, but you know, I didn't know we had different mothers and fathers. I had no idea because you know,
because we were so young. We were young.
Right.
We were 7 and 5, and you didn't come to 7 years later, and we were all young. You know, I'm in the 2nd grade, so we didn't know nothing but being children.
Right, but I'm saying it's still an anomaly, because even so, people kind of know that they're, you know, I never, like, you guys never act like stepsisters or brothers that they didn't have either mother or father the same. To me, I didn't see that you did anything differently than a regular family.
Like that.
We connected. So we trying to get to the bottom of when Patricia, Dave, Diane, and Jackie met Larry, Sandra, Ricky, and Diane, and they all children at this point. So this is the question, that the burning question that we're trying to get to, but the reception won't allow us to get to it. Go out there. I guess we can talk a little more on Jan. So you said you didn't really know that there was a step element in effect. What made you become aware of that?
I think there was a memory of when James came around, and it was really confusing to me, because he came around and they was calling him daddy, and I'm like, why are they calling him daddy? That's daddy right there. He's not my daddy. You know, it was like, it was really, nobody really explained it to me. It was just very confusing when he came around, and I heard them calling him daddy. And it was just, I was just totally, I was confused. I don't know when it got clear to me. I don't know when it got clear to me. I guess I don't remember the time that it became clear to me, but I do remember very vaguely when he came around, and it was just, I was totally confused because they was calling him daddy, and they called daddy, so I didn't know. I didn't know why. I didn't understand that. So,
well, I had to distinguish, because this is how I started learning. They call Grandpa Papa. So Kurt's first 4, they call Grandpa Papa.
But Brenda didn't.
Brenda's the exception. Brenda's the only one, and you were probably
Brenda
closer
was
to
around
Brenda.
more so.
Me
than my older one. So Brenda always called daddy. So
you're right. And we learned on the last call that the reason they started calling him Papa was because Uncle James came around. Because before Uncle James came around and met him, they were calling him Ray as well. And then Uncle James met him, and he was like, that's a good man, I'm going to call him Papa. And everybody started calling him Papa after that. So he brought that up. So he actually set the trend for those 4 oldest. And you're right, Brenda did call him daddy. Yeah. Okay. So, okay, we good. We can see you now. Can see you. Right.
Always around the house.
We can get to the answer. So back to that question. Do I need to refresh, or we just talking about when you first got to meet your siblings, 4 new siblings, meeting these 4 other siblings and sort of blended family, and what was that like coming together?
Well, because when growing up little, and my father always made sure that we knew our mother's side of the family. Even though they was divorced, he had the children with him. And so by the way he raised us, he never showed any partiality with who my aunts and uncles and was. on my mother's side. So I always grew up as a child to know them. So when we came into the Ellison family, it was no different. This is my wife, her teller, you know, when they got married. I don't know I went to the wedding or not. I don't know if any of us went. They just got married. And this is your sister, this is your sister, this is your brother. And that's what we heard from our leaders as our parents. And that's what it was, just as Janice stated. We didn't know any difference because we wasn't taught any difference. Because it's all how you taught and how you grow up and learn from your leaders or your parents, how we respond to one another. Now, I stood out my union last year that how did y'all all blend? Y'all was the Brady Bunch. We didn't
his mine and ours. His, mine, and ours, because y'all were the Brady Bunch, but when Mark and I came along, then it became his, mine, and ours.
I don't know that show.
Oh, you have to look up. You have to watch the show His, Mine, and Ours. That's our family.
So then you added the extra.
Raised his, mine, and ours. It was all ours.
That's
right.
That is true.
I know.
And that's how the show was His, Mine, and Ours.
Say it again.
That's how that show was His, Mine, and Ours. It was really all of ours. And that's why I love that show so much, because it so reminds me of my family.
Okay. Yeah, but we was raised as we brothers and sisters. We slept together. We did everything together. And what great memory I have, because where I live in the country, we had no utilities. We had no restroom inside. We had no lights. I don't think we had lights. And no, we didn't have water. So when we got to go to where Mom lived in the project, I wanted to move in. I said, this is heaven. That is such one of the greatest memories I have. I had never seen running water in a home. I had never used the bathroom in the home other than a pot. You know, we called. Yeah, and so we came in. I remember coming in, going upstairs. The bathroom was right straight up the steps, and that was my experience with coming together.
I mean, it just show you how much we can take things for granted, or we don't even consider life without utilities. And the fact that it was like this was your first introduction to lights and running water, you know, and what a luxury it is.
Such a luxury.
Yeah.
Sometimes when it break up, it'll record better. So I'm gonna hope that the recording catches what you're saying.
Okay.
So when it comes, you talked about Grandpa doing a pretty good job keeping you connected to your mother's side of the family. What about his side of the family and keeping you all both of y'all and y'all connection and anything that y'all might know about more about his side, because Grandpa had siblings, right?
Yes, he had 7 brothers and 1 sister. They all lived in the Pennsylvania County area pretty much. So we grew up with them. Diane, oh man, this battery gone. Your grandmother, Jackie, all of us grew up knowing my uncles.
Okay, yeah, I feel like I know some of them, or I definitely met Uncle Charlie.
Yes.
And
Uncle Charlie.
I met Lynn, and I guess Lynn is you all's cousin, right?
He was dad's. He was my dad's sister son.
Okay.
So that was his nephew.
Mm-hmm.
So what I know that Grandpa spent some time in Norfolk, Virginia.
Yes.
And that's where you were born.
Right.
Grandpa had told me one story I remember because he would take me back to school when I went out there. And he told me that they used to like have to take the ferry. You know how we get across through the tunnel? He was like, when they wanted to go back and forth over the water, they would have to take the ferry. So I was like, I can't, I couldn't imagine, but you know, so he was sort of, when he lived in Norfolk, he was sort of venturing out then because all of his family was from
Danville.
Okay. I can
That's
see Grandpa
correct.
as
But see,
an
my uncle
Okay.
Willard had moved out first, and he had
Okay.
went into the military. Now we
Oh,
40s.
losing
Daddy
you.
followed, I guess, Willard to that area, Norfolk, and then but he was military. He went out there to work on the ships.
Okay. I'm interpreting. You said he was in the military, so he went like to work on the shipyards.
My
Your Uncle Willard.
Yes, my uncle Willard. He was in the
Okay.
military, and my father followed him out once he was stationed in Norfolk. And my father went out there to work on the ships, and I guess that's where the separation happened between he and my mom. And after that, that's when he came back to Danville, and that's when we lived with my grandmother.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So were a lot of, well, I'm just thinking about the cousins. I'm jumping back and forth now. So
But I know all my cousins from my dad's side, all my uncles, all my aunts. He made sure we knew all of my family from my mother's side. We was just kind of raised up with all my uncles on my dad's side, and his nephew, his nephew's children, my first cousins, all of them. And pretty much because at that time, we were all, Diane, Jackie, Sandra, we were all growing up together at that time.
So
And the cousins. And the cousins.
And the cousins.
Yes.
Oh yeah, always a lot of people. And you know, isn't that interesting how you still carry their trait? Because I know when I talked to you the other day, Diane, you had 1 million people in the house.
Yeah.
It's just like in the family that we do the same things that our parents do, even if we don't plan to do it. So that's sort of cool.
Yes.
Well, let's talk about, we got a few more. Let's talk about like your fondest memories or your early fond memories, because hopefully the goal is to get the siblings back together and talk about a little later years when, you know, other generations started to come into play. But before that happened, like your earliest fond memory of just those years together and being in a house with all of your siblings. I know the running water was high up there, but this is something that y'all can think of like as a growing up that was just like a memory of your sibling that really sort of stand out for you, that, you know, story we might not know.
With me?
Well, both questions for both of you, so either can answer.
Well, it was being different in age, variety, so stretched apart. Because see, I'm coming in, I'm the baby. Janice not here yet, and Mark not here yet. So with them, your aunts and siblings and mother and everything, when mom and dad married, when mom married, they moved into a house, and we had like 3 bedrooms with 10 kids in it, and we were just so close to each other. We together and we went to church together, loved each other, and this is how we just grew up. It never changed. We never had really no bad moments really that would matter to any breakup with the family or not speaking to another one. Nothing got to that degree at all. It was always being one, and that's how we continued our legacy to who you all today. And maybe that's why y'all don't understanding now what our history is. Will let you all know the work that y'all have to continue to keep the family together as one. Now, I'm the only one remain of my 4 siblings. I'm the only one. And
you're 4 biological siblings.
Yeah.
You're 4 biological from the first marriage, not the only one sibling.
From the first marriage. Yes, that's correct. I'm the only one that's remained alive from the first of the four that came together. And so I try to do my part to make sure I keep that connection with the Ellison family, because to me, it's me here alone on that side. And Janice and Mark may feel different because they're more connected to the mother side. And I'm connected to my father and my stepmother side, which I call mom as well. So I have to make sure I keep that connection with the family, and I do mostly with that through Brenda, but now I do mostly with that through your grandmama, Siobhan, with Diane. And I call Diane a lot of times now mom, because she was, when I was young and ill, and there was so many of us, I didn't have that natural mother, lap to sit on anything. So I used Diane. Diane became like my mom when I was a teenager. I was 13, 14, because my teeth, I had bad teeth at that time. And she used to nurse me. So yeah, and she used to nurse me. And when we came very close, and we always stayed close. And I always respected Diane and honored Diane because of that. And so she now, to me, we have that connection that like no other. And it just grew that way. Nothing was forced. Everything grew. It just grew. And that's the way I hope it continue. I wasn't sure recently, but I hope it continues. So when Diane said that you was going to call me and said we're going to do this, I said I'd love to do it. So Janice, you go ahead.
So I just have, I don't think it's one specific memory that I have, but I just recall that I was just surrounded by a lot of love. I was, like I said, I was much younger than most of my siblings until Mark came along. And I just felt like everybody loved me. Like I felt like I was a baby doll or something. Like, it's like everybody, I just was surrounded by so much love from all of my siblings. All of my siblings adore people, and I think I'm spoiled to a degree, but I'm not like a bratty type of spoil. But people always ask me, "Are you an only child?" And I'm like, "No, I got a whole bunch of sisters and brothers." I can't tell you how many people have said to me that I project that aura of being an only child. And I said, do I act spoiled? It's like, no, you don't really act spoiled. You just have that aura like you're an only child. And if you think about it, an only child is like that child is just love, because that's the only child you have. But the issue was, I feel like I had a whole lot of mini mommies. Not an issue, but that's the thing. I just felt like I had a whole lot of mini mommies. And I call them my mommy sisters sometimes, because especially when I got, well, let me just say this too. I remember when I first went to school. Now you got to remember, my home, after some time, the only ones was left was Diane and Brenda. Everybody else got older and moved away, but Diane and Brenda was young, closer to me in age, so they were there. But even before that, I just remember just being surrounded by so much love in my house, and it's just like no bad things that I ever remember happening. And then when I went to school, the first one to school, I had a horrible time at school. I mean, a horrible time at school, because I was taken out of that loving environment where everybody just loved on me and adored me, to school where them kids was bad and mean, and it's like, I don't like this place. So it was a really difficult time for me to leave my home that was so full of love to go to school.
And Diane. But
did we lose her?
She might come back. Yeah, she might come back. Well, go ahead, keep going.
I think she said her battery was going dead too. So her battery might have went dead. But yeah, that was probably my greatest. It's not the greatest memory, because it was a horrible experience for me when I had to leave that beautiful environment to go to school. But that's a very starking memory for me. And I wish Diane was here now, because in saying, how they were my my sister mommies, because they always kind of had my back. You know, mom and dad was older. They had us, Mark and I, in their 40s, and back then 40s was older.
Yeah,
so by the time I became a teenager, you know, they were, you know, pushing 60, and Diane and Brenda, for the most part, it was Diane and Brenda, but even your mother, it was just like they took, I don't know where I would be. Now, I'm gonna tell you this. Mom and dad was two very loving parents, and I wouldn't trade them in for anything. I love them to death. But again, it was such a gap in the age, and it was like their understanding it was not there. And it had it not been for all of my older sisters and brothers, wouldn't be the person I am today. It's like they were like my intersections. They interceded for me so much.
They were your bridge. Okay, I want to say this just in case we get cut off. We're going to resume with all of the siblings. Hopefully we can continue, but we're approaching the, I think I get 40. I get 4, yeah. So we're going to resume hopefully very soon, and we can hopefully fill in some of the gaps from the breakup, but we'll also blend at least 1 or 2 other siblings so that we can get everyone talking and talk about the next years when people was moving out and when you started to be auntie cousin, because you know, auntie sister and things like that, because it's like you're growing up with your nieces and nephews basically,
right.
Initially. So we want to talk about that. Maybe we'll get Darren on the line and you know start changing up the mix and get different people talking every time. I guess we're gonna wrap up because then Diane is gone. But if it's something you have in mind for next time that you want to talk about in Janice, or anything that you want to bring up, that is the idea. We're going to keep it going. We are family. I wish Diane was here. I'm going to send her a text, but thank you for taking the time out today to participate. They still let me, I don't know. Thank you for coming. And we will resume this until we get as much information as we can and really have a nice document of who we are. It's so important. We see it now. Do you see how important it is to know who you are and how it makes you feel more sure of yourself? So we want everybody coming after us to have that same sense of surety.
And our family, Siobhan, is such an anomaly. I mean, they can write an interesting book from our family, because we are really truly an anomaly in many, many ways.
I agree. Yep. I'm learning every time. I'm getting a tidbit every time I'm learning a new story, and I love stories. So like you said, I'm finding, and I found that our family does have one of the more interesting ones. So that's cool. So I'm gonna let you go. I love you.